Hey fellow garden gnomes, it's Brittany. Welcome back to my channel. It has been a long time since my last video, and there are a couple different reasons for that. Mental health, poor time management, just getting used to being in a new place because I did move from my apartment to this house and I wanted to get everything set up. Like I'm setting up a food forest, as well as I eventually set up my annual vegetable garden area, which I'll be able to show you guys a little bit later once the snow is totally gone. Also, I think I felt like my equipment that I had wasn't going to be able to give me the type of footage that I really wanted to bring to you guys. But now I do have some better equipment, and I've made it my resolution that 2024 is the year that I'm going to revive my YouTube channel. So I figured why not start from the beginning of the garden season really, which is seed starting. Normally I would like to have started a lot of these seeds earlier, start of February, maybe mid-February, but here we are, start of March, and I haven't gotten them started yet. Like I said, my time management skills are not the best. So I'm going to bring you guys in closer so you can see some of the details of what I'm planting as I talk a bit about, why I'm starting these seeds and the trays that I'm using and everything like that. So this is just one of a few types of plug trays that I have. This particular one is from Vessie's, which is a Canadian seed and garden tool company located in PEI. So you can see that it's not the typical plug tray in that instead of having separated squares, they have 20 rows. Now I would not use this type of plug tray for any type of plant. I'm using them specifically for my onions or onion family varieties, as well as root vegetable varieties, but particularly radishes, turnips, rutabagas. I'm not going to start any carrots early because they pretty much, you have to just direct sow carrots. So I'm going to start by seeding my green onions. This variety is called Evergreen Hardy, and it's pretty cool because it's a perennial green onion. They're supposed to come back every year, and I really like that because I'm definitely looking to start a homestead where my goal is sustainable food production, and so anything that I only have to plant once but is going to give me food year after year is ideal. So the nice thing about this type of tray is with these small seeds, I don't have to be super careful. I can just kind of sprinkle them along the row. And I'm going to do 3 rows of these green onion seeds. And the reason I'm using this type of tray specifically just for onions and root vegetables is because I find that by the time they're ready to be put in the ground, they're only big enough to kind of have some roots. And so I don't have to worry about them getting root bound or even getting too tangled up in their neighbors to be able to pull apart without ripping the roots. So what I find is that I can just start them like this, and they'll grow, and then when it comes to transplanting them, I just take out the entire row, and usually there's enough roots that I can pull out the whole row at once, and I'll just very gently pull apart the plants and then transplant them and be able to put the correct spacing when I'm transplanting them. And I just really prefer that, especially with the root vegetables. I mean, onions, they have to be started early anyway, so I have to start them inside, but a lot of people do start root vegetables just out in the garden. But I find that because of the small seed size, it's often very difficult to space them properly when direct sowing. And so I'll just sprinkle them along here, and then again, once I'm transplanting them, they've grown big enough that I can easily gently pull them apart and then do the correct spacing, rather than having to try and mess around with thinning out root vegetables that have been directly sowed, which I've tried that a couple times and it just never works, and I just end up not getting a crop of that particular root vegetable, because the plants grew too closely together. And so right now I'm just sprinkling these seeds on top of the soil, but afterwards I will go with like a thin sprinkle of soil to cover them. And so this is my red onion variety. I'm doing 3 rows of these red onions, Rosa di Milano. And these are Corentin leeks. Corentin leeks. It says that they're super hardy, which is good since I am in Canada. And I'd like to keep them in the ground as long as possible so that they get as big as possible in the fall. One thing I have to be careful of when starting seeds this way is to make sure that you're putting the seeds in the correct rows, because it would be very easy for me to just, not think about it and start putting seeds in here when no, these seeds are supposed to be here. And I'm doing 4 rows of leeks, partly because I help out with a local community garden and we always have a plot for the local food bank, and so if I have extra seedlings, that's where they'll go. But I love leeks. My leeks that I grew last year did pretty well, and as a result I ended up just chopping them up and putting them in a silicone freezer bag, and I've just been reaching into that all winter to include in my various recipes, and that's been really nice. And so since I have quite a few varieties of radishes, turnips, and rutabaga, I'm just doing like 1 row per variety. I don't need any more than that. Radish seeds are a little easier to see and handle than onion seeds, so I can try to be a little bit more particular about where I'm placing them, but like I said, I don't mind having quite a few seedlings because they will simply be separated when I transplant them. Normally, even when I starting my root vegetable seeds indoors, I would usually only start them a couple of weeks before the average last frost, but obviously this is early March and I'm in East Canada, so our average last frost isn't till like mid to late May. And so the reason I decided to start these root vegetable seeds early is something I am trying a little bit differently, because I know that there are certain plants like tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, all that need to go in the ground after all chance of frost has passed. But there are also a lot of varieties, such as many root vegetables, many brassicas, that can actually go into the ground before your average last frost because they can tolerate I just did the thing that I warned you not to do, is I put it in the wrong row, but they're all radishes, I guess, so it's not a huge deal. But anyway, back to what I was saying. Radishes, turnips, rutabaga, they can all go into the ground before average last frost. And I really want to try that specifically because they're all cool weather crops, meaning that they grow better in cooler weather. And so the issue with waiting until the average last frost to transplant them in past years is that the weather often would get quite warm very quickly, and my root vegetables would end up, going to seed or and just getting really woody and unpleasant tasting. And so my experiment this year is going to be actually putting the seedlings of plants that can tolerate a bit of a frost, actually putting them into my garden before the average last frost date. And I also have some metal hoops that you'll see in a future video, as well as some frost fabric. So I am planning on putting that over one of my garden rows so that there will be some protection. But that's basically what I'm trying this year. Last year was the first year that I basically started my root vegetables in this type of tray. I still waited until the average last frost to transplant them, but I did start them in this tray and then gently pull apart the seedlings to transplant them, and that was the first year that I really got a decent crop of radishes. So I'm excited to see what might happen by adding both this method and the actual transplanting earlier than the average last frost. Other things that I'm going to do differently this year is I have an organic fertilizer. I actually have two different organic fertilizers, each with different ratios of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And I'm planning on applying that organic fertilizer much more often. Before, I've usually if I've applied it at all, it's only been maybe once or twice a season. But I definitely think I could get some better results if I maybe tried to do it at least every 1.5 to 2 weeks. Including when I have them as seedlings. So in a week or two, these seeds that I'm starting, I'll put some water, especially once they have roots, I'll put some water that has the organic fertilizer mixed into the plant tray below. Well, I mentioned that this is from Vessey's, but the plant trays are from Bootstrap Farmer. Now, if you're in Canada, you can't get them from the website for Bootstrap Farmer because just because of them being like a US company and it's in a gardening company, and it's, things are more complicated. But you can get them either from Amazon or from a company called Indoor Farmer, which is out of Ontario, and the website is indoorfarmer.ca, and they ship. My understanding is that they ship Canada-wide. I've definitely been able to get them here in New Brunswick. It's so funny how, the onion seeds were so small, and because they were black as well, it almost looks like I didn't put them here, but then you can definitely see these radish seeds. Turnip seeds are definitely smaller than the radish seeds, so I'm just going to sprinkle them. And again, because they're black, just like the onion seeds, it looks like I'm not really doing anything, but I am. So turnips and rutabagas, I think a lot of people sort of think of them as very similar, and maybe certain varieties are, but I do know that there's some turnip varieties, like this golden ball turnip, that is more of a salad turnip, like you would slice it up and throw it in a salad. And then there's this, well, this might be a salad turnip as well, but rutabaga for sure, you usually stew it, like you would maybe potato. Okay, speaking of potato, I still have a few potatoes left from my harvest last year, and I've been really enjoying that, the ability to, through the winter, just go back into the room where I'm storing them, grab some, and have that available for dinner. So I'm always looking to increase my potato harvest every year. I think this year I need to just be more serious about the more regular feedings with an organic fertilizer, because I think potatoes are just such heavy feeders, and because I like to plant them in containers, the nutrients that are available are very limited and will tend to run out quickly. So that'll definitely be in a future video. Lastly, my Laurentian rutabaga. So what I'll probably do with some of these seeds, like especially the radishes, since they tend to be ready much quicker, is I'll probably stagger some starting of seeds so that I can also get an even harvest of radishes throughout the summer. So maybe I'll probably start some more seeds. Well, but in about 3 weeks or so, I might be in a position to direct sow them. So I don't know. I'll have to decide if I want to, or if I want to do another tray like this of them. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit just to try and get like a light covering. And you can probably tell that this soil is moist. I call it soil, but it's seed starting mix. That's an important distinction to make, especially if you are just starting out, because seed starting mix is sterile, whereas soil, if you were to go and just grab some soil from a garden, or soil, anything that would be called soil mix from a store, that's not going to be sterile. And you need the sterile mix because seedlings are incredibly fragile. Like when you start seeds, they are very susceptible to disease, to fungus. And I mean, if you're direct sowing, the outdoor environment tends to be not as hospitable to fungi, bacteria, microbes that would damage your seedlings as the indoor environment is. Trying not to cover these too much, since I don't think that they're supposed to be planted that deep. You can always look up the recommended planting depth, but a good rule of thumb is about 2 times the size of the seed. And obviously a lot of these seeds are pretty small, so they shouldn't be planted too deep. Okay, there we go. So that is one tray started. I just realized that I started talking about the seed starting mix being moist, and then went completely off on a tangent. But basically I put in a bunch of mix into this plastic container, poured some water in it, sort of mixed it up with my glove, because I want the environment of the seed to be moist and warm too, because it will be going on a heating mat, because that is the best, those are the best conditions for seeds to germinate. And now I have more of a standard plug tray, and that's because I'm doing my tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, okra, cherry tomatoes in here. And so I want to just have kind of one plant. I'll probably put two or three seeds in each plug, just to buffer in case there's some poor germination. I'm gonna have to sort of see how it goes, because some of these tomato varieties, I only have a couple seeds, so I don't know how many rows necessarily I can do of each. So this is a gobstopper cherry tomato, and I think I'm just going to do the 3 plugs because I only had a couple of these seeds left. Red pear cherry tomato. Oof. Again, very few seeds. I'll probably just do 2, I think. Yeah. I didn't have one of my tomato varieties because I didn't think they would fit, but it looks like they will. So I'll do 1 plug of this yellow pear tomato, cherry tomato, I should say. My parents really like this one. I guess I don't know if it would be a favorite, but I'm willing to try it again. So here's a blush cherry tomato. So I think I will do 3 plugs of this. And I'm just putting aside the packets that I empty, because I do want to keep them available so that I can, if I want to look at the information on them, I can. And then this, I believe, is my last cherry tomato variety, called Champagne Bubbles. It's supposed to be really, really good, and I don't think I've managed to grow it in past years, so hopefully I'll actually be able to grow something and try it. Now I only have enough seeds for 1 plug, so hopefully one of those will germinate. Okay, now I need to decide which one I want to put in those 2. Maybe I'll do this Amish paste tomato. I have a couple paste tomato varieties because I really want to can some sauce this summer for the following year. So if one variety only gets 2 plugs, I don't think that's going to be too big a deal. The alpaca paste tomato, Luke from MI Gardener really likes this variety, so I am very interested to try it. It'd be so easy for me to go crazy with starting seeds for tomatoes, but the reality is that I only have so much growing space, and so I have to keep that in mind. But also, if I do have a few extra, like I said, I could put them in the food bank plot. This is speckled Roman paste tomato. Now the biggest challenge for me will be what to do if more than one seed per plug germinates, because I know that the best way to get a healthy plant is to have only one plant per plug, because otherwise multiple plants their roots will get entangled, they'll compete for nutrients and water and everything. But it's so hard when I have multiple plants to justify, pulling them out or cutting them off at the base or something, because I'm like, well, what if I could use that? Now into my beefsteak tomato varieties. Okay, so now I'm going to be a little more fastidious with my seeds. And that's Mr. Stripey, which is red with slightly orange stripes. This one is a Mana Orange, and I love orange tomatoes because I do find that higher acidity foods can, wreak some havoc on my stomach. Most of these are indeterminate varieties, I believe. Actually, how many seeds are left here? Oh, yeah, there's a lot. Okay, so I'll keep that for a future year. This one's kind of interesting. Aunt Ruby's German Green Giant. The trick with these will be telling when they're actually ripe, because of course, usually plants that are green are unripe. But so since most of these are indeterminate, they will be planted in one of my rows that I have a 5-foot by like 15-foot cattle panel along. Each of my rows are about 20 feet long. And so I will trellis these so that I can grow them more orderly, I guess, get better air circulation, which will help prevent disease. Now my bell peppers, I have these yellow Corno di Toro long bell peppers. Well, I mean, they're not bell peppers, I guess technically, they're sweet peppers. And then maybe I'll just do an extra California Wonder Bell, provided I have enough seeds, of course. Oh, I have plenty of seeds. So, yeah. In the first year or two that I started growing stuff, I tried just taking a regular permanent marker and some plastic stakes and labeling like that, and I soon realized after the first rainfall that permanent marker can come off in a rainstorm. So now I use this particular special waterproof marker that I got from Vessie's, which is so intense actually that even when I take like rubbing alcohol to these labels, it doesn't always completely come off. Now I'm going to do my row of 2 eggplant varieties, and Casper is one of them, and it's a white eggplant, which I think is interesting. Now eggplant is a little bit of a test for me because I wouldn't say I necessarily like buy eggplant from the store, but I do see a lot of interesting recipes, and so I feel like if I grow it, I'll be more likely to try it out. Oh shit, you know what? I just friggin' did the entire row without even thinking. So what do I want to do then? Yeah, I'll do 3 plugs of this Rosita eggplant and then 3 plugs of the okra. So make sure that I only do 3 plugs this time. Sometimes you just kind of get on autopilot and, you know, completely forget what your intention was. Now my okra, again, okra is something that I don't necessarily get from the store a lot, but I am very curious to try it, and I feel like if I grow it in my garden, especially with the fact that I'm trying to save money on groceries, I'll be more inclined to try, you know, different recipes with it. Okay, now second last row, and so I have this can long thin, and I think I'm only going to do 2 plugs of that because the other 4 plugs are going to go to jalapenos. In terms of hot peppers, I really enjoy my jalapenos. And you might see as I'm putting them in, I am pressing them down a bit more because I do think these seeds, they should be planted a little deeper than my root vegetables and onions. So I'll put that here, okay. Finally, I have a couple hot pepper varieties that I want to try, but I don't know if I'll like so much, so I'm only going to do 2 plugs each. This one is called mushroom red pepper, and it's supposed to be somewhat like a Scotch bonnet. Hungarian hot wax pepper. And lastly, ancho grande pepper, or well, isn't this also called a poblano? I don't know actually. I might be mixing up 2 varieties. So now we're going to just sprinkle a bit onto each plug. So because I started these later than I would normally, at least with the onions and peppers, I would have liked to start them earlier. Tomatoes, eggplant, okra, this necessarily isn't a bad time to start them, but I still feel like it kind of puts me a bit behind a little bit in terms of both of these are going to go on the bottom row of my seed starting rack, which I will show you guys in a few minutes. And so there's only room for really 2 trays on each rack, so I'll have to wait until they germinate and I can move them up 1 row to where there are lights and no heating mat, so that I can then put my brassicas and probably some herbs and flowers that I'm going to be starting onto the bottom rack with the heating mat. And I'll be sure to do another video when I start that as well. Heck, maybe it'll be around a time where I'll also be able to like combine kind of a little bit of an early spring tour of my vegetable area and then my food forest area, which is only on its fourth, well, maybe fifth season, I guess, because I started it in the summer of 2019. As food forests go, since they consist of perennials with a lot of fruit trees, fruit bushes that take some time to really get going, they're still pretty small. My pear tree last year was the first year that it produced. It originally had 3 pear trees, and then I don't know if maybe one of them was eaten by an animal, one of them was like knocked off, and then I think the third one I might have picked too early because it was like super firm. And then, you know, obviously I couldn't really do anything with it then, which was too bad. But it is a sign that I think, you know, this year I'll get some more pears. And then my blackberry bush has, I believe it's already fruited twice. So for 2 seasons thus far. This will be the 3rd season. And last season I know was like really, the blackberries were very plentiful. So hopefully that'll be a repeat this year. And then last fall I planted a strawberry bed, and strawberries don't tend to take too long to establish. So hopefully I'll be getting some of that. And I already have a well-established rhubarb plant, so I'll be able to do some tomato rhubarb pastries and stuff. This is my seed starting rack, or at least the bottom half. It is 4 shelves high, so you can see the bottom with the heating mat. There's no light there because you really only need heat for seeds to germinate. And then you see the next 2 up, and there's 1 more after that. And each one has lights that are hanging at a slightly higher height, so that as my seedlings get taller, I kind of move them up. And that way I can avoid plants getting leggy, because if the light is just sort of one height and it's too high for the height that the seedlings are, they'll try to grow towards the light quicker than they're actually growing like wider. So I've plugged in the heating mat now, and I am putting my trays down there. Now usually I recommend putting like a plastic top over the trays just until the seeds germinate. You don't want the plastic tops to still be there afterwards, because that can cause fungus and microbe growth. Basically it is a bit of a balancing act, because you want to have an environment of heat and moisture for the seeds to germinate, but if there's too much heat and moisture, then it encourages the microbe growth. So my solution to that is to put the plastic dome on just until the seeds germinate, and then once they germinate, it comes right off. But this year I did realize that I forgot to sterilize some plastic domes, so I may do that in the next day or 2. I don't know, it depends on how quickly I notice the soil mix, or the seed starting mix, drying up. So there we have it. My first seeds started for the 2024 season, which is very exciting. Like I said, I am planning on reviving my YouTube channel for this season, so I'm going to be thinking about all the different type of video topics I can bring to you guys. Certainly put in the comments if there's something in particular you would like to see. Also, let me know if you've started any of your seeds yet, what they are. I love hearing from you guys. Until next time.